The Los Angeles heat shimmered off the pavement as the blacked-out Cadillac Escalade rolled to a stop at a red light. Inside, Ethan Carter, one of Hollywood's most recognizable actors, rubbed his temples. His latest movie had just wrapped, and he was dreading the relentless press tour that awaited him. Fame was exhausting, and the shallow glitz of Hollywood left him feeling hollow. He exhaled sharply, glancing out the window, expecting nothing but the usual L.A. chaos. Instead, something caught his eye, a small lemonade stand set up by the side of the road. A boy, no older than 10, stood behind a wobbly table, his messy brown hair sticking to his forehead. He waved a sign made of cardboard, the letters scrawled in uneven marker strokes. Lemonade for Grandma's medicine. $1 a cup. Ethan blinked. He had seen plenty of kids selling lemonade for fun, maybe to buy a new toy or save up for a game. But medicine? The light turned green, and the driver pressed a gas. But Ethan raised a hand. "Pull over," he said. His security guard looked back at him, confused. "Here? Boss, this isn't the best neighborhood." "I said pull over," Ethan repeated. The car eased to the curb, and before anyone could object, Ethan stepped out. The hot air hit him like a wall, but he ignored it, making his way toward the stand. The boy noticed him and straightened up. His bright green eyes were filled with both determination and exhaustion. "Hi, sir," the boy said, his voice small but steady. "Would you like some lemonade?" Ethan glanced at the old plastic pitcher on the table, the watery, slightly cloudy liquid inside. The boy had only a few cups left. "Yeah," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket. "How much?" $1 a cup," the boy repeated, holding out his hand. Ethan pulled out his wallet. He had no small bills, only hundreds. He hesitated, then pulled one out and placed it on the table. "I'll take a cup." The boy's eyes widened as he stared at the bill. "Mister, I don't have change for that." Ethan waved him off. "Keep it." The boy gulped, then quickly poured a cup, his hand shaking as he handed it over. Ethan took a sip. It was mostly warm water with a hint of lemon and too much sugar, but he swallowed anyway. "What's your name, kid?" "Lucas," the boy answered. "And your grandma? What's wrong with her?" Lucas looked down at his sneakers, his fingers tightening around the crumpled edge of a sign. "She's sick. Needs medicine. But we don't have enough money this month." Ethan's heart clenched. He glanced at the boy's clothes, faded, slightly too small. His sneakers were scuffed, the soles worn thin. "Where's your mom and dad?" Lucas bit his lip. "My mom works 2 jobs. My dad left when I was little." Ethan nodded slowly. He had grown up in a rough neighborhood himself, raised by a single mother who had done everything she could to put food on the table. "How much do you need for the medicine?" Ethan asked. Lucas hesitated, as if afraid to answer. $300 more. Ethan glanced at the measly earnings in the jar, maybe $20 at best. He exhaled, glancing back at his car. His driver and security guard were watching curiously. Something about this kid stirred something deep inside him. He wasn't just going to hand him money and leave. He was going to help. And he had no idea just how much this decision would change both of their lives. Ethan Carter stood in the thick Los Angeles heat, watching Lucas rub his fingers over the $100 bill as if he were afraid it might disappear. The boy's face was a storm of emotions: shock, gratitude, hesitation. He bit his lip and looked up. "Mister, this is too much," Lucas said, attempting to push the money back toward him. Ethan shook his head. "No, kid, you keep it." Lucas swallowed hard and tucked the bill into his pocket, as if afraid someone might snatch it away. Then, without warning, his small shoulders sagged under a weight no 10-year-old should have to carry. $300 more, huh?" Ethan asked. Lucas nodded. "Yeah. Grandma's heart medicine is really expensive. She gets scared at night, 'cause she knows if she doesn't take it, something bad could happen." Ethan had seen a lot in his years as an actor. The polished Hollywood elite, the fake smiles at award shows, the endless red carpets. But nothing hit him quite like those words. A kid selling lemonade in the brutal sun, just so his grandmother wouldn't be afraid to go to sleep? Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "Where do you live, Lucas?" The boy hesitated. Strangers weren't supposed to ask those kind of questions, right? But something about Ethan made him pause. He wasn't like the other men who drove by in fancy cars, pretending not to see him. He had stopped. Lucas pointed toward a rundown apartment complex a block away. Over there, apartment 3B. Ethan nodded. Your mom home? Lucas shook his head. She's at work. At the diner. Ethan sighed. And your grandma? Lucas hesitated. She's sleeping. She gets tired a lot. All right, kid, he said, glancing at the lemonade stand. How about we make a deal? Lucas narrowed his eyes. What kind of deal? You let me help you sell this lemonade. And in return, you tell me what else you and your grandma need. Lucas frowned. Why would you do that? Ethan crouched down, meeting the boy's gaze. Because I know what it's like to feel like the whole world is on your shoulders. Lucas stared at him, searching his face for any sign of a lie. Finding none, he nodded slowly. Okay, he whispered. Ethan stood, rolling up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt. All right then, let's get to work. Lucas handed him a paper cup, his lips twitching into the smallest smile. You ever sell lemonade before, mister? Ethan chuckled, taking the cup. Not exactly. But I once spent a summer washing cars for $5 a pop. Close enough. Lucas grinned. Yeah, close enough. Ethan turned toward the street, taking a deep breath. H-E-Y, Los Angeles, he suddenly shouted, his voice carrying over the traffic. Lucas jumped. Where you? Lemonade. Ethan bellowed. Best in town. $1 a cup. And all for a good cause. Pedestrians turned. Cars slowed down. People on the sidewalk started whispering. Was that Ethan Carter? And just like that, the lemonade stand had its first real rush. Lucas' eyes widened as a man in a business suit stepped up, pulling out a 20. 1 cup, please. Then a woman in workout clothes. Make it 2. A group of teenagers. Oh my God, it is him. We'll take 5. Lucas scrambled to pour drinks, his hands working as fast as they could. He had never sold so much lemonade so quickly. Ethan grinned, handing out cups with the practiced charm of a man who had spent years working the crowd. And for the first time in a long time, Lucas felt like he wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone. The lemonade stand was booming. Within minutes, more and more people stopped by, not just for lemonade, but because of Ethan. Word spread fast in L.A., and soon a small crowd had gathered. A young woman in yoga pants whispered to her friend, Is that Ethan Carter? Her friend gasped, gripping her phone. No way. Oh my God, I love him. What is he doing here? Ethan smirked, effortlessly handing a cup of lemonade to an elderly man. Enjoy, sir. The man squinted. Aren't you that actor? The one from that space movie. That's me, Ethan replied, grinning. The man chuckled. Well, hell, you got me. I'll take another cup just for the novelty of it. Lucas was working as fast as he could, pouring cup after cup. His little hands struggled to keep up, and Ethan noticed. All right, kid, let's run this properly, Ethan said, rolling up his sleeves even higher. I'll take orders, you pour. Deal. Lucas nodded, his cheeks flushed with excitement. A few customers took out their phones and started recording. Ethan Carter selling lemonade? This is insane. Hey, mister, a teenager called out. What's this for? Ethan glanced at Lucas, then turned back to crowd. Lucas here is trying to raise money for his grandma's medicine. Every cup of lemonade helps. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Then something unexpected happened. A woman pulled out a $50 bill. I don't need lemonade, but take this. A man in a suit dropped $100 in the tip jar. Me neither. Consider a donation. More and more hands extended money. Some people not even taking a drink. Lucas' eyes widened. W8, this is too much. Ethan rested a firm but gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. It's not too much, kid. It's people who care. Lucas looked up at him, his throat tight. He had spent so long trying to do everything by himself, so long believing no one would help. In just half an hour, the small plastic tip jar was overflowing. Lucas couldn't believe it. He wiped his sweaty forehead. staring at the cash like it wasn't real. Mister, this is more than I needed. Ethan grinned. Good, because life isn't just about surviving, kid. It's about living, too. Lucas bit his lip, his emotions a tangled mess. He turned toward Ethan, hesitating. Then, in a quick, shy movement, he wrapped his arms around the actor's waist in a small, grateful hug. Ethan froze for half a second. He wasn't used to people touching him in a way that wasn't part of a photo op or a scripted moment. He rested a hand on Lucas' back. You did good, kid. The boy pulled away, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. I can get Grandma's medicine now. Ethan nodded, and maybe something extra, too. Just then, a voice called out, sharp and familiar. Lucas. Both Ethan and Lucas turned. A woman in a faded diner uniform was hurrying toward them, her face a mix of panic and confusion. Lucas stiffened. Mom. Ethan saw the exhaustion in her face, the worry in her eyes, and she had no idea why half the city was crowded around her son's lemonade stand. Lucas' mom rushed forward, her sneakers scuffing against the pavement, her apron still tied around her waist. She was breathing heavily, as if she had run all the way here from work. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes, tired, worried, desperate, locked onto Lucas immediately. Lucas, what are you doing? She gasped, grabbing him gently by the shoulders. Her gaze darted around the crowd, the piles of money, and then, finally, to Ethan Carter. Her breath hitched. Oh, my God, she whispered. Why, you're... Ethan smiled, holding up a hand. Yeah, I get that a lot. But she wasn't focused on him. Not really. Her fingers tightened around Lucas' shoulders. Lucas, what is all this? What's going on? Lucas shuffled awkwardly. I was selling lemonade, Mom, for Grandma's medicine. Her face twisted in something between shock and sadness. Oh, honey, you shouldn't, she turned to the crowd. Everyone, I appreciate your kindness, but you don't have to. Lucas tugged at her sleeve. Mom, look. He pointed at the jar, stuffed the brim with cash. Lucas' mom froze. Her lips parted slightly, her fingers twitching like she wasn't sure whether to reach out or step back. Ethan spoke gently. Your son's a good kid. He was doing what he thought he had to do. She turned to Ethan then, really looking at him for the first time. Her eyes held a quiet storm. Relief, guilt, gratitude, exhaustion. I'm sorry, she murmured, shaking her head. I didn't know. I was at work, and my manager said someone showed me a video online of Lucas, and then I saw your face, and I panicked. I ran all the way here. Ethan nodded. That's understandable. Her eyes flickered back to the money. This is too much. We can't. Yes, you can, Ethan interrupted, his voice firm but kind. That's what it's for. Lucas' mom swallowed hard. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't have to, Ethan said. Just take care of him. And your mom. She inhaled sharply, blinking against tears. Lucas tugged at her sleeve again, his voice soft. Mom, does this mean we can get Grandma's medicine? She let out a shaky breath, then nodded. Yeah, baby, we can. Lucas grinned, an unguarded, pure smile that made Ethan's chest tighten. Just then, one of the teenagers in the crowd called out, Yo, dude, you should totally start a GoFundMe or something. I bet people would donate even more. Ethan turned back to Lucas' mom. He's right. People want to help. She hesitated, pride warring with necessity. Ethan took out his phone. I'll set it up for you. Lucas' mom covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Lucas looked up at her. Please, Mom. She exhaled, nodding. Okay. Ethan smiled, tapping at his phone. All right, kid. Let's make sure your grandma doesn't have to worry ever again. And just like that, the story wasn't just about a lemonade stand anymore. It was about hope. The crowd had begun to disperse, leaving behind murmurs of amazement and the occasional flash of a phone camera capturing the moment. Lucas' lemonade stand, once just a small table on the side of the road, had turned into something far bigger than he ever imagined. His mother still looked overwhelmed, her hands shaking slightly as she clutched the bundle of money. Ethan had just finished setting up the GoFundMe, and in less than 10 minutes, donations were already pouring in. $1,500 and climbing, Ethan murmured, refreshing the page. Lucas' eyes widened. That's more than we need. His mother swallowed hard. Oh my God! But before she could say another word, a loud, gasping sound made them all freeze. It came from behind them, from the direction of their apartment. Lucas whipped around so fast his sneakers scraped against the pavement. Grandma! His mother's face drained of color. Mom! Without thinking, Lucas bolted, dropping everything. Ethan reacted on pure instinct. Let's go. He ran after the boy, his heart pounding. Lucas' mother was right beside him. Panic etched into every line of her face. They reached the small apartment complex in seconds, pushing through the rusted gate and up the stairs. Lucas fumbled with the key, his hands shaking so badly he could barely fit it into the lock. Ethan stepped in, steadying the boy's hands. I got it. The door flew open, and there she was. Lucas' grandmother, a frail woman in her 70s, was slumped in the old recliner in the living room. Her breathing was ragged, her face pale, her hand clutching her chest. Grandma! Lucas cried, running to her side. His mother dropped to her knees, her voice trembling. Mom? Mom, can you hear me? The old woman's eyes fluttered open, hazy and weak. Sarah, she rasped. Ethan knew the look on her face. He had seen it before. This was serious. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling 911. Lucas grabbed his grandmother's hand. It's okay, Grandma. We got the money. You can get your medicine now. But her grip was weak. Too weak. Ethan pressed the phone to his ear. Yeah, we need an ambulance. Elderly woman. Difficulty breathing. Possible heart failure. Lucas' mom was crying now, shaking her head. Mom, stay with me, okay? The old woman coughed weakly. Her lips parted, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might be slipping away. Lucas choked on a sob. Please, Grandma, don't go. Ethan clenched his jaw, his own heart hammering. The sirens wailed in the distance. Help was coming. The wail of sirens echoed down the street, growing louder with every passing second. But to Lucas, it felt like time had slowed. His grandmother's grip was weakening in his hands. Grandma! Please, you have to hold on, he pleaded, his voice cracking. His mother was beside him, tears spilling down her face as she brushed damp gray strands of hair from her mother's forehead. Mom, just breathe, okay? Just hold on a little longer. Ethan stood near the door, his phone still clutched tightly in his hand. He had seen a lot of drama in movies. He had acted in life-or-death scenes before, but nothing compared to this. This was real. This was life slipping away right in front of him. Lucas. The old woman's voice was barely a whisper. Lucas sniffled, squeezing her hand. I'm here, Grandma. I'm right here. A weak, trembling smile tugged at her lips. You, my sweet boy. Lucas nodded rapidly. I got the money, Grandma. You can get your medicine now. You're going to be okay. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but her eyelids were fluttering, her breaths coming in shallow gasps. No, 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 don't close your eyes. Lucas sobbed. Please. The apartment door burst open. Paramedics. 2 EMTs rushed in with a stretcher, their faces calm but focused. She's having difficulty breathing? One asked. Lucas' mom scrambled out of the way. Yes. She has a heart condition. She missed some of her medicine because we couldn't afford it, and now... The EMTs were already in motion. One of them placed an oxygen mask over the elderly woman's face, while the other checked her pulse. Heart rate's irregular, one of them muttered. We need to move her now. Lucas was frozen in place, watching as they lifted his grandmother onto the stretcher. Can I go with her? His mother asked urgently. One EMT nodded. You can ride in the front of the ambulance. She turned to Lucas, hesitating. Baby, I'm coming too. Lucas said quickly, his little hands clenched into fists. One of the paramedics hesitated. Kid, we don't have room in the back. Lucas' face crumpled. But... I'll bring him. Ethan cut in. His voice was firm, steady, commanding, even, I'll follow my car. Lucas' mom turned to him, as if just remembering that a world-famous actor was standing in her tiny apartment. She blinked, her face full of conflicted emotions. Ethan gave her a small, reassuring nod. I promise I'll keep him safe. She exhaled shakily, then kissed the top of Lucas' head. Okay, baby. Stay with Mr. Ethan, all right? I'll see you at the hospital. Lucas nodded, wiping at his wet cheeks. The EMTs wheeled his grandmother toward the door, and then they were gone. Lucas turned, looking up at Ethan. His small frame trembled, his lips pressed together as if he were trying to hold back more tears. Ethan knelt down, resting a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. Come on, kid. Let's go be with your grandma. Lucas swallowed hard and nodded. Ethan grabbed his keys and led him out the door. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and worry. The bright fluorescent lights buzzed softly, casting everything in a cold, sterile glow. Lucas sat in the waiting room, his small hands gripping the edges of the plastic chair. His legs swung anxiously, barely touching the floor. His face was pale, his green eyes locked onto the double doors where his grandmother had disappeared. Ethan sat beside him, his hands clasped together, his famous face tight with quiet concern. The ride over had been silent, except for Lucas' shaky breaths and the occasional sniffle. Now they waited. Lucas' mother paced in front of them, her diner uniform wrinkled, her hands wringing together as if she were trying to physically hold herself together. I should have worked more hours, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. I should have found a way. I should have... Mom, Lucas interrupted softly. She turned, her face full of guilt. Lucas' voice wavered. You did everything you could. Her lips trembled. She dropped to her knees in front of him, cupping his face. Oh, baby. Lucas bit his lip. Is she going to be okay? Her throat worked, but no answer came. Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady. She's in the best place she can be right now. The doctors are doing everything they can. Lucas nodded, though he didn't look comforted. The waiting room was quiet except for the occasional beeping from the nearby nurse's station. Minutes stretched into an hour. Then 2. Every time the doors swung open, Lucas' head snapped up, his hope rising, only to sink again when it was another nurse, another doctor, but never the one they were waiting for. Ethan sighed, rubbing his face. He had been in plenty of hospitals before, but only for movie roles. Now, the walls felt suffocating. Lucas shifted beside him, his small body tense. Mr. Ethan? Ethan turned to him. Yeah, kid. Lucas hesitated, his fingers twisting in the hem of his shirt. Do you believe in prayers? Ethan blinked. That was the last thing he had expected. He hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. Lucas swallowed. I used to pray every night for my dad to come back. He never did. Ethan's chest tightened. Lucas looked down at his lap. But I'm going to pray for Grandma anyway. Ethan watched as the little boy squeezed his eyes shut and pressed his hands together. His lips moved in a quiet, desperate whisper. Ethan wasn't sure what to do. He had spent most of his life believing in things he could see, things he could control. But right now, sitting beside a 10-year-old who had been forced to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, Ethan wished, for the first time in years, that prayers actually worked. And then, the doors swung open. A doctor stepped out, holding a clipboard, his face unreadable. Lucas' mother rushed forward. How is she? Is she? The doctor exhaled. She's stable. But it was close. Lucas let out a shaky breath. His mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Oh, thank God. Lucas' voice was barely above a whisper. Can we see her? The doctor nodded. She's very weak, but yes, just one at a time for now. Lucas jumped to his feet. I'll go first. His mother hesitated, then nodded, brushing his hair back. Okay, baby, go see her. Lucas took a deep breath and followed the doctor through the doors. Ethan watched him go, his own heart feeling oddly full. The kid had fought so hard to save his grandmother, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan Carter felt like he had done something that actually mattered. Lucas stepped cautiously into the hospital room, his heart thudding in his chest. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the quiet space, and the air smelled of antiseptic and something faintly metallic. His grandmother lay in a hospital bed, small and fragile beneath the crisp white sheets. Tubes ran from her arm, and an oxygen mask rested on her face, though she wasn't wearing it at the moment. Her eyes fluttered open as he entered. "Lucas." Her voice was weak, but full of warmth. Lucas swallowed past a lump in his throat and ran to her side, carefully taking her wrinkled hand in his. "Grandma," he whispered, his fingers trembling. "You scared me." A tired smile touched her lips. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Lucas sniffled. "You don't have to be sorry. Just don't do that again, okay?" She chuckled softly, though the effort seemed to drain her. "I'll try my best." For a moment, they just held hands, neither speaking. Then Lucas' grip tightened. "Grandma, we got the money." Her brow furrowed slightly. "Money? For your medicine." I sold lemonade, and then people started helping, and then—" He hesitated, his small chest puffing up slightly. "And then Ethan Carter came and helped me." His grandmother blinked. "Ethan Carter?" Lucas nodded excitedly. "Yeah, the actor. He stopped at my lemonade stand, and he got all these people to come, and we made so much money, and now you can have your medicine, and I don't have to be scared anymore." His grandmother's lips parted slightly, her eyes full of emotion. "Oh, my sweet boy." She squeezed his hand with what little strength she had. "You've always taken care of me, haven't you?" Lucas' throat tightened. "I just didn't want anything bad to happen to you." She smiled at him, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Lucas, I need you to listen to me." He nodded, his small face serious. "You are the kindest, bravest boy I know," she whispered. "And I don't ever want you to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders alone. Do you understand?" Lucas swallowed. "But I had to, Grandma. Mom worked so much, and we didn't have enough, and I—" She reached up weakly, brushing a trembling hand against his cheek. "You're just a little boy, my love. You deserve to be one." Lucas bit his lip. "But I don't want to lose you." His grandmother smiled gently. "And you won't. Not today, my darling. Not today." Lucas let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Just then, there was a soft knock on the door. Lucas turned to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, a small smile on his face. "Hey, kid," Ethan said quietly. "Can I come in?" Lucas turned back to his grandmother. "Grandma, this is him, the guy who helped me." His grandmother's tired eyes studied Ethan for a long moment. Then, with a soft, knowing smile, she said, "I know who you are." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, I guess my face is kind of everywhere, huh?" She nodded. "I saw one of your movies once. The one where you saved the world." Ethan scratched the back of his neck. "Well, I think your grandson saved the world today. At least as part of it." Lucas beamed. His grandmother squeezed Lucas' hand one last time before turning her attention back to Ethan. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of emotion, "for helping my boy." Ethan shook his head. "He helped me just as much, ma'am." The old woman smiled knowingly. Ethan wasn't sure why, but something about that look told him she understood him better than most people ever had. Lucas tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Can you stay for a little bit?" Ethan hesitated. He had a world waiting for him outside, reporters, agents, movie deals. But none of it seemed as important as this. He smiled. "Yeah, kid, I can stay." And so, for the first time in a long time, Ethan Carter didn't feel like a Hollywood star. He just felt human, and it was the best feeling in the world. Ethan pulled up a chair beside Lucas and his grandmother, feeling strangely at ease in this small, quiet hospital room. It was nothing like the lavish sets or luxury trailers he was used to. There were no cameras, no scripts, no interviews. And yet, this moment felt more real than anything he had experienced in years. Lucas sat on the edge of the hospital bed, still clutching his grandmother's hand. His little fingers gently traced over her wrinkled skin, as if afraid she might disappear if he let go. "Are you going to be okay now, Grandma?" he asked softly. His grandmother gave him a weak but reassuring smile. I think so, sweetheart. Thanks to you. Lucas' face brightened, but Ethan noticed the exhaustion beneath his excitement. The kid had been running on adrenaline all day. Lucas' mother peeked into the doorway then, her face still lined with worry. Lucas, honey, you should eat something. You've been up since early this morning. Lucas turned to Ethan. Will you eat with us? Ethan hesitated. He wasn't used to being asked simple things like that. People usually wanted something from him, a photo, an autograph, a favor. But this kid, he just wanted his company. Yeah, Ethan said with a small smile. Let's get some food. Lucas grinned, hopping off the bed. Ethan stood, stretching. Hospital food isn't exactly 5-star, but I've had worse. Lucas' mom chuckled softly, shaking her head. We don't need 5-star. Just something to fill our stomachs. Ethan followed them down the cafeteria, and as they sat at a small table, eating sandwiches that were a little too dry, he felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. Lucas' mother suddenly sighed, looking at the growing donation page on Ethan's phone. I still can't believe this, she murmured. People we don't even know are donating to help us. Ethan nodded. Sometimes people surprise you. Lucas was scrolling through the comments under the fundraiser, his eyes wide. Look, Mom, this person gave $100 and said, for the bravest kid in L.A. His mother's eyes welled with tears. She took a shaky breath, shaking her head. I've spent so many years believing we were on our own. She looked at Ethan, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to thank you. Ethan leaned back in his chair. You don't have to. He looked at Lucas and smirked. I should be thanking him. Lucas tilted his head. Me? Why? Ethan exhaled. Because you reminded me that there's more to life than movies and money. Lucas' small face turned serious. But aren't those the best things to have? Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Nah, kid, the best thing to have is people who care about you. Lucas blinked up at him, then smiled. Ethan felt something shift inside him. He had spent years chasing fame, wealth, and success, believing those things would bring him happiness. But right here, in a tiny hospital cafeteria, eating dry sandwiches with a 10-year-old kid and his mother, this was the most fulfilled he had felt in a long, long time. A few days later, the world had changed, at least for one small family in Los Angeles. Lucas' grandmother had stabilized and was expected to make a full recovery, thanks to the overwhelming generosity of strangers. The GoFundMe had exploded overnight, surpassing $50,000. Donations came from all over the country, and the story of the little boy who sold lemonade to save his grandmother had gone viral. News outlets had picked it up. Reporters showed up outside the hospital, wanting interviews. People were calling Lucas a hero. And through it all, Ethan Carter stayed. He didn't just donate and disappear like most celebrities might have. He stuck around, checking in on Lucas and his family every day. He sat with Lucas in the hospital, helped his mom set up a real bank account for the donations, and even ordered them a month's worth of groceries, so they wouldn't have to worry for a while. Lucas' mother still didn't know how to process it all. I don't know how we'll ever repay you, she had told Ethan more than once. And every time he answered the same way. You don't have to. The day Lucas' grandmother was discharged, the sun was shining. Ethan stood outside the hospital with them, watching as Lucas helped his grandmother into the car, his little hands careful but determined. She turned to Ethan with kind, knowing eyes. You have a good heart, young man. Ethan smiled, scratching the back of his neck. I try. She patted his hand. Don't stop trying. Lucas beamed up at him. Are you going to visit us? Ethan smirked. I think I'll have to. Someone's got to teach you how to make real lemonade. Lucas giggled. Yeah, mine was kind of bad, huh? Terrible, Ethan teased. Lucas laughed, then did something that caught Ethan off guard. He hugged him. Not a quick hug, a real one. Ethan hesitated, then wrapped his arms around the kid, squeezing him just a little. You're a good kid, Lucas. Lucas pulled back, grinning. And you're a good grown-up. Ethan chuckled. That's the first time anyone's ever called me that. Lucas' mother smiled softly. You're welcome at our home anytime, Ethan. He nodded, shoving his hands in his pockets. "I'll take you up on that." As they got into the car and pulled away, Ethan stood there, watching them go. A week ago, he had been just another exhausted actor, drowning in the emptiness of Hollywood. But now, he felt like something had changed. Maybe he wasn't just a movie star anymore. Maybe, for the first time in a long time, he was something more. And all it took was a little boy, a lemonade stand, and a reminder that kindness still mattered in the world.